Good afternoon, my name is Pat Russo. I'm with the law firm of Wendell Marks, and I'm your panel moderator for this afternoon for the Petty. So our role here this afternoon is to talk about the Vision Zero program. And I'm delighted, first of all, to begin with introductions of the three panelists you're here from. Not only were they noted panelists for the discussion about Vision Zero and black box, in quotes, technology, but they really have shown great commitment to their jurisdictions, to their communities, and to their country. To my immediate left, our first panelist is Commissioner Meera Joshi. Meera Joshi has served as a New York City resident, city government for over a decade. Most recently, she was the Deputy Commissioner for Legal Affairs and General Counsel at the Taxi and Limousine Commission. She now serves as the Chair and Commissioner at the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission, the TLC as it's known. Commissioner Joshi was also a principal architect, now and in her prior role as architect of the Settlement with Disability Advocates for the, which resulted in a 50% wheelchair accessible taxi fleet by the year 2020. So in essence, what you heard about this morning in discussion about accessibility concerns throughout the conference thus far really is germinated out of New York City and that settlement. She previously served as the first deputy executive director of the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board. It's an agency tasked with overseeing police misconduct allegations. And I'm proud to say she's a former inspector general at the City of New York's Department of Investigation at the time of me, where she was responsible for investigations of alleged criminality and corruption at the New York City's Departments of Correction, Probation, Juvenile Justice, and the Taxi and Limousine Commission. She received her undergraduate law degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Next speaker and panelist today to Commissioner Joshi's immediate left is Joanne Rouse. Jo has worked in the public sector for almost a decade. Most recently as Executive Director for Technology Programs at the New York City TLC. In her 2 years with the TLC's policy department, she has managed technology initiatives affecting the TLC's 65,000 plus licensed vehicles, including the implementation of the next generation of in-vehicle technology to facilitate credit card payment and electronic trip data capture in New York City's taxi cabs. Her recent technology agenda includes evaluating use of black box data recorders and other technologies in the for-hire vehicle via the TLC's Safety Technology Pilot Program, which you'll hear more about. Prior to joining the TLC, Ms. Rousen managed technology projects and implementations for the federal government as a public sector consultant for IBM. She managed custom telephony software design for the U.S. government as part of the 2010 census, and she also assisted with TSA's requirements for generating and processing improvements and streamlining vetting airline passengers against watch lists. Our final speaker, and to Ms. Rousen's immediate left, to your most right on the panel, is Christopher Brogan. Chris Brogan is the chairman of AssureNet, Inc. He's the founder and president of Fleet Risk Advisors, supplier of Fleet Risk. He founded Telematics, pioneer safety intelligence systems founded by ISO, the leading provider of insurance data, with the goal of developing the first vehicle crash depository. Chris and the AssureNet team are known within transportation and insurance industries for delivering insurance and telematic-driven services that reduce the frequency and severity of loss. In his past experience, he's worked at TRAC, Transition Risk Analytics Center, licensed by Qualcomm and marketed as a predictive performance system. Chris, as I said before, we have a distinguished panel, served our nation, the United States, as a naval aviator for 8 years. He received his BSEE from Manhattan College and attended Columbia University's EMBA program. So our goal here today is to get these illustrious panelists to speak about Vision Zero. Just a few notes about background on this issue before we speak. Vision Zero, it's a road traffic safety project started in Sweden more than a decade ago, 17 years ago. And the aim, the goal, is to achieve a highway system with no fatalities or serious injuries in road traffic. The core principle is life and health can never be exchanged for other benefits within the society. So just of interest, especially to the regulators in the audience, is that there's no cost-benefit analysis of the original program. is a discussion about getting to a goal and achieving it, if you will, by all means or whatever means necessary. So it's based on 4 core principles. Ethics, human life and health are paramount, so they take priority over mobility and other objectives in the road traffic system. Responsibility for all. Providers and regulators of the road traffic system are sharing it with the users. Safety, obviously, is a core principle where road traffic systems should take account of human fallibility, and minimize the opportunities for errors and the harm done when they occur. And lastly, the mechanisms for change. Providers and regulators do their utmost to guarantee the safety of all citizens, cooperating with road users, and all 3 must be ready to change to achieve safety. So, to achieve these 4 core principles, what kind of tools are available to these regulators to achieve Vision Zero goals? And black box technology is an obvious means to achieve these goals. When there was such interest in the black box technology and Vision Zero program, you might have seen in your early programs that it was divided into breakout sessions, but we joined it as a plenary because they really do go hand in hand. And I think that what you'll see from these panelists is that the idea of Vision Zero, the idea of no more traffic deaths, is really incorporated by their discussion points today. So we thank you for attending today, and without further ado, I give you the Commissioner of the New York City Tax and Leasing Commission, your objection.
And we did have some fun times at DOI, and we'll continue to do so here in the world of taxi. I just want to start off by saying that I feel very fortunate and have a lot of gratitude for the fact that I work for a boss who puts traffic safety at the forefront. Mayor de Blasio and the administration has made Vision Zero a priority, which means the laudable and achievable goal of 0 traffic fatalities by the year 2024. And this is a huge endeavor that takes not just all the people of New York, but the government of New York and the businesses of New York. And that is our work to do. There are about 8 city agencies that are involved in Vision Zero in New York City, but it's really led by 3. And TLC, the Taxi and Limousine Commission, is the smallest of the 3. The other 2 are the Department of Transportation, which directs all of the streets, intersections, markings, traffic signs, and then of course the NYPD, the police department, 35,000 strong, that do all the traffic safety, ticketing, and enforcement on the streets, along with TLC. And because I'm here, and I think it's safe to say, we have the hardest job, the Taxi and Limousine Commission, because our job in Vision Zero is all about balance. We have a very difficult task. We have to encourage drivers to change their habits, and that basically means to slow down. We have to encourage passengers to think about safety and not speed, and to demand that drivers get them to their destination safely and not quickly. And we have to do this in a city where a minute is probably shorter than it is anywhere else in the world. So this is an extremely daunting task, and it's all about balance for the Taxi and Limousine Commission. A little bit about our drivers. Who are TLC drivers? There's about 115,000 licensed taxi and limousine drivers, and approximately 79% of them do not have any crashes on their record. So that means if you're going to get in a vehicle in New York, you're safest getting in a vehicle that's driven by a licensed TLC driver. And I think that's a great starting point for Vision Zero. But obviously, we have more work to do because we're not at 0. We have probably, I'd say, about 2 to 3 crashes a month. 3 is on the high side that might result in near death or death where the TLC driver is involved. And that's more than we can withstand. So for Vision Zero, we basically have a 3-pronged approach. We can't really change the culture in New York City with TLC licensed drivers with any one approach. So we have to sort of do it with 3 things in mind. And the first is penalties. That's penalties for drivers that are reckless, penalties for drivers that engage in dangerous driving. And in that endeavor, we're not alone. The City Council has worked with the administration, and actually the mother of a young boy who was killed in an accident with a crash involving a TLC driver are really the driving force behind changes in local laws that make it easier for the TLC to suspend the driver's license of a driver who's involved in a crash where there's found to be a nexus and there is critical injury or death. And again, when I talk about balance, the problem here is, you know, when people say we've gotten stricter penalties, well, if we were anybody else, we could all say that's a great thing, but we're the TLC and it's about balance. Stricter penalties, but we also have to support a driving population that we regulate who's extremely scared about laws that they feel target them and essentially put them to blame for any of the crashes that occur in the city of New York. So our job here in implementing these local laws is not just writing rules that make the summonsing process available and easy to effectuate, but really to message to the drivers that this is a very harsh penalty, but it is a very harsh penalty for that very small minority of drivers that actually are dangerous, and that it helps all drivers to get dangerous drivers off the road. And I would be less than candid if I didn't tell you that that is a difficult sell. We're in the process now of implementing the rules that go along to make these local laws effective, and it is a real spectrum of testimony that we get. We had a hearing, I think, last week, and it was started off with the mother of a woman, you know, this is a woman who's lost her child to a taxi cab, saying that she's in support of the rulemaking, and it ends with drivers saying, we're going to lose our livelihood. But we have to continue as the regulator to go forward and be judicious about the harsh penalties that we are going to impose, and be cognizant about the fact that they are only going to be imposed on a minority, and that is a reckless minority. Some of the other enforcement methods that we have begun are using red light cameras. That usually the red light cameras capture the image of a vehicle license, and then DMV, the State Department of Motor Vehicles, issues a ticket to that vehicle owner. Since we know which drivers are in every vehicle, we're getting that information, and we can then also ticket the driver. We are also getting trained in LiDAR guns so that we can do specific targeted speed enforcement against TLC drivers at very dangerous intersections, and we get a list of dangerous intersections from our Department of Transportation. And again, this is about balance, because it is easier for us to identify the drivers of some licensed vehicles than it is of others. Our yellow and green taxis have equipment in there that require the driver to enter a license number. So once they enter that number, if they are caught in a red light camera or they're caught with a speeding gun, we know exactly who's driving the vehicle at that time. Our livery and black cars do not have that same technology, and that's a manual process. We then have to contact the base and figure out who was driving the car at that time. So again, this is about balance. We have to make sure that although it is not as easy to enforce in every sector, we're consistent about enforcing, and so that both sectors get equal enforcement, and that there isn't a sense that only one sector is being targeted versus another. The second prong of TLC's Vision Zero initiative is education. So one part of it is driver education. Taxi drivers, before they become licensed, must go to taxi school. We've added to taxi school a whole curriculum about safety, and we worked with the police department and with the Department of Transportation to figure out, if you only have a little bit of time and you have a group that might not, probably has more attention than this group here today, but they might not be at their highest attentive moment, how are we going to get them to focus on safety? What are the main things we need to get across? And we boiled it down to really 4 things: failure to yield, being careful when you make left turns, speeding, and distracted driving. And so we do a very sort of punchy demonstration of what the dangers are in those 4 situations. And that's something that every taxi driver now will be part of their curriculum before they get licensed. There's some other sort of broader methods we've used. We did town halls. We went throughout the city and probably continue to do that with elected officials, with Department of Transportation and with the police department. And we listened to communities complain, I'll be honest, complain primarily about car services or cabs in their area where they thought there was a concentration of reckless driving. And then we could refocus our enforcement efforts on those areas once they've been identified to us. And a lot came out of that that just sort of organically grew out of any grassroots effort. We made connections with captains in police precincts that were interested in doing joint enforcement efforts that we probably wouldn't have made if we were all sitting in our offices. And we made connections with community leaders who wanted to help us with outreach and education that we clearly wouldn't have made if we'd all been sitting in our offices. So it's not so much the content of what we said at these town halls, it's the fact that we were there, we were open to making these connections, which really, I think, launched a lot of our initiatives in ways that we wouldn't have been able to. We've also gone out to bases, which is, those bases are really the hubs for the black car and liveries in New York, garages and the large fleets. Gone to their garages, met with their drivers, and talked to them about what we've learned about the keys to safe driving, and listened to their concerns about, and a lot of them, about whether there's targeted enforcement, are they being persecuted, and how do they also improve? Because you have to remember, every driver is, oftentimes they're a parent, they're a pedestrian, they're a bicyclist, they're a passenger, so we all have a vested interest in this. No one's coming from just one side. And this kind of one-on-one conversations with our licensees and meeting them at the place where they work, I think has been extremely powerful, and I'd just like, if you can give me the time, just read to you a letter that we got that I think sums up in so many ways what Vision Zero is all about. A month ago, this is a letter we got from one of our licensees who'd been at a garage where we gave a presentation. Hi, a month ago or so, you came to my garage to address cab drivers, in particular concerning the city's speed limit. I would have been involved in a ghastly accident last Monday morning at 5 a.m. while driving westbound on West 86th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. I was making about 28 miles per hour when a car going uptown on Amsterdam Avenue ran the red light while I was approaching the middle of the intersection. He swerved to the left, avoiding my cab only by a few feet at a speed of about 50 miles an hour. That brought home to me how observing the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in the city could save lives. I feel you need to hear this. It happened barely 24 hours ago. If I'd entered the intersection at 32 miles an hour, I would have either died or my body would have been mangled by impact from side collision. So I think that kind of brought home for all of us when we got the letter how important our work is. Even if it takes a long time, even if it's one by one, it's worth it if it changes one driver's behavior. Some of the other methods we've used for outreach are decals that are now required and some are optional in all of our licensed vehicles. The most prominent one is one that goes behind the rear view mirror that reminds drivers to pay attention when they're turning, because, like I said, the left-hand turn and paying attention for people that are in the crosswalk are sort of two of the biggest causes of crashes in New York City. We've done public safety announcements that appear, and these are really aimed at passengers, but passengers are pedestrians as well, in the back of taxis, reminding them to buckle up, to be careful when they open the door so they don't hit cyclists, and to be careful when they're in the crosswalk, to look both ways, make sure there's no oncoming traffic. We've had a safe driver pledge that at least 200 drivers have signed where they've, pinky swear, cross their heart, that they're going to uphold safe driving techniques. And I mean, it does sound a little hokey, but I think in the act of doing it, it at least takes one conscious minute where you're thinking about how you conduct yourself on the road, and that does end up being part of your regular routine. So it is important. And safety flyers, which now go out to every driver, every licensee, and all of the mailings. The third part of our Vision Zero initiative is incentives. And I think we're going to hear later tonight from one of the sort of biggest incentive, one of the biggest incentive programs we've launched, and that's our driver honor roll. And I think one of our honorees will be speaking tonight at the dinner. Basically, we went and looked at all of our drivers and over a 5-year period and identified those that have for 5 years no TLC violations, no DMV violations, and no crashes with injury. And we identified 295 drivers that met that criteria, which in New York City, and given the volume of miles that taxi drivers drive every year, which is approximately 70,000 miles, that is, to me, quite incredible. We had a wonderful ceremony on the 8th. About 137 drivers came and attended with their families. We were well attended by members of the industry and elected officials and the mayor himself, and sent a strong signal to all drivers that the mayor appreciates, the city appreciates, and puts high priority on the good work that they do every day, and understands completely how hard it is to be patient in New York City traffic, and that's what this is all about. So that was, I think, a really good, successful signal and move, and some tradition that we hope will grow every year, and we hope next year we have more than 295 safe drivers. We've also allowed for additional points. There's a point system in New York. So if you get to a certain number of points, your driver's license and your TLC license is suspended, and another threshold and it is revoked. We're giving more credit now for people who take defensive driving courses as an incentive for people to take the course to further reduce their point balance. This is an area in the incentives that I think there's more work for us to do, and we will be, in conversation with the industry and the drivers groups on how to find meaningful incentives, because to put incentives out there that no one really takes advantage of are really just sort of a bureaucratic waste of time. We have to think about incentives that actually convince someone to make a different choice in action, and that's something that's sort of work next steps and work forward. But like any good government agency, after we did lots of work and came up with our plan, we decided, maybe we should call the people who started this whole thing and find out what they think. And so a couple weeks ago, we gave a call to Sweden. We gave a call to Klaus Tingvall, who is the father of Vision Zero, and he's now the director of the Swedish Road Administration, and he was very happy to talk to us, and he was very candid about their experience. And we asked him, what works? What works? We explained, we regulate all the taxis. We have 115,000 drivers. There's lots of vehicles on the road. There's lots of traffic. There's lots of diversity. And there's lots of bureaucracy, government, and lobbying. And he said, yes, yes, yes. Well, we've been doing this since 1997, and almost everything we've tried hasn't really worked. So we do have some conclusions, though, that they're finally coming down to the things that work. And he said individual penalties and focusing on the individual driver is important, but it is not what's going to change behavior. It's not what's going to change the culture. It's something that probably everybody has to do, because you can't launch a program without it having some individual component. But what he said was really, he said, I really have two messages for you. One, you should think of things in chunks. And two, you should think about changing the culture for drivers using the people that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and the people that can sort of influence their day-to-day situations. And you as a regulator, not so much. You're not going to be their day-to-day contact. And what he meant by that, it turns out, is trade associations, garages. In New York City, our drivers are not employees, they're independent contractors, but essentially the garage that they come into every day, the one that they get paid out to, the one they lease their vehicle from, that really functions as their employer. That's their day-to-day conversation about their job. And he said, when you change culture and you have those garages and those trade associations make Vision Zero a priority, you will find that is the quickest way to change individual driver behavior. And I think in New York City we've already seen that. When we did our driver honor roll, we had tremendous outpouring from the industry of support. And not only support in terms of attendance and public statements saying that they supported, but really support, financial support. We had groups that gave out $100 to every driver that was on the honor roll list. We have other groups that gave out TVs. We had other groups that gave out donations. But you had a real sense that the industry was standing behind the drivers that had proven proven themselves as safe drivers and using them as an example and as a mentor for the rest of the driving community. And so, seeing as they've been doing this since 1997 and they've tried everything, I was really encouraged to hear that they found something that worked and something that I've already seen signs of in New York as working. And we look forward to better cooperation, more communication, and work with the industry on how to change the culture at sort of the base garage trade association level. The other big chunk is government. Government has to work together. And as agencies, I worked in the city for 10 years now, we do like to fight among each other, but apparently that's not efficient. So we have to work together. And Vision Zero has been really a great opportunity to set a new tone in city government on cooperation. And we work hand in hand now with NYPD and DOT. And anyone familiar with New York City government knows that, sort of NYPD sort of stood on its own among agencies and probably had a different set of rules when it came to sort of cooperation, primarily because of what they do. They're the main law enforcement in a huge city, and so they had sort of a different position. But with Vision Zero, we are equal partners. If we need information, they provide us. We now do joint. We also appear on crash scenes. They let us know that there's a crash and a TLC inspector will come to be part of that scene. And that kind of cooperation has been amazing, not only in the fact that it cuts down on time and we can take swift action against the licensee, whereas before we were in the dark, but it also allows us to work together on broader projects such as commuter vans, or what to do with bus lanes and passengers dismounting. So we can now think together about those things. And the same with DOT. And I'm going to leave you with the last chunk because I think it's just one that we can all have a takeaway from, and that's passenger buy-in. And it's something I said in the beginning. Really telling passengers that it's not about how fast you get there, it's about how safely you get there, and to make sure that passengers understand that the way to do that is to show it in your tip. And that's really fundamentally the way we're going to change driver behavior in New York, and I think driver behavior across the country. So thank you very much, and everybody drive safely out there, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
And now we'll be hearing from Joanne Rousen from Baltimore TLC.
So I'm Jo Rousen. I'm the Executive Director of Technology Programs at the TLC. I'm going to be talking to you about our vehicle safety technology pilot program today. So this pilot program is going to allow the industry that we regulate put various vehicle safety technologies into service and let us take a look at how effective these technologies can be at reducing crashes and dangerous driving behaviors. So Mira actually just spoke in great depth about Vision Zero, so I'm not going to really spend that much time here, but this is one of the initiatives that we're working on at the TLC to further those Vision Zero goals. TLC, as Mira mentioned, is one of the lead agencies in this initiative. Our licensed drivers and vehicles cover over 2 billion miles per year, and they're a really highly visible component of the city's traffic, so we can make really great impacts here. This is a list of the TLC initiatives that are in the Vision Zero Action Plan, and we're going to be focusing today on the Safety Technology Pilot Program. We're going to be looking at black boxes and alerting devices and speed governor technologies. Based on the types of companies that responded to 2 safety technology RFIs that we released earlier this year, we expect the technologies to fall into 3 main categories. The first is black boxes. These are data recorders that can identify events like speeding and hard braking, which can indicate aggressive driving. These devices can be useful for analyzing the events that surround a crash and can be used as a tool to provide drivers with feedback on their driving. These technologies draw information directly from the vehicle's onboard computer or from secondary devices, which can include cameras or accelerometers. And technologies like this have been used to assist with determining the circumstances surrounding a crash and expediting insurance proceedings. We're also hoping to learn more about risky driving behaviors and areas that we can target at the TLC for education and for other policy initiatives from these devices. Information from black boxes can also be helpful in identifying offenders when drivers are victims of crimes and have been used to exonerate drivers who've been falsely accused of wrongdoing. So not only is there a benefit on safety, but there also can be benefits to the drivers that actually have this equipment installed in their vehicles. Lots of commercial fleets, such as FedEx and UPS, already have these kinds of technologies that are installed in their vehicles to promote safety. Some insurance companies are allowing customers to use these devices to provide usage-based insurance ratings and qualify for discounts on their insurance premiums. And then even the TLC's vehicles, as a part of Vision Zero, are getting these types of devices as well to monitor our drivers. We volunteered to be the first agency to get them installed in our fleet. And we also have some instances of this equipment already being installed in some of our licensed vehicles. So there's already some interest in this that some of our licensees are taking advantage of. The next type of technology system that we're hoping to learn more about is driver alert systems. These take these data recorders a little bit further and actually can provide a proactive alert to the drivers and to passengers when there are certain events detected, such as speeding or potentially an object in the vehicle's path. This live feedback can hopefully help the drivers avert a collision and drive more safely. Alerts can take the form of audio or visual alerts to the driver, or even haptic alerts where the steering wheel or the seat can vibrate to let them know that they've triggered something. Finally, we're also hoping to learn about speed governors. Speed governors are devices that actually limit the speed that the vehicle can travel. They can be pretty simple and just have a maximum total speed for the vehicle, or they can be a little bit more dynamic and actually do this by geographic zone. So we're hoping to learn about all three of these types of technology in our pilot program. So getting into our actual pilot program, these technologies give us an excellent opportunity to improve the safety of our regulated industries. By testing these on a pilot basis, we're also going to have the opportunity to get data to look at and see and measure the impact of these technologies on safety, and to get feedback from the industry and from the public, and identify any implementation challenges in a real-world for-hire setting. So I want to talk a little bit about the process that we went through to develop this pilot program and how potential technology companies can apply. We started with research into what's already out there and best practices for adoption. So we looked at information online and used that information to craft 2 requests for information that we released earlier this year to get some more information directly from some of these providers. The RFIs were really helpful in helping us understand more about the specific offerings and capabilities, as well as providing us with some actual case studies and data behind how these technologies have been effective. We also met with numerous technology companies who gave us even more detailed information about their products and were able to show us more about how they work, what kinds of information we can get, what it all looks like. And then, of course, we met with our industry stakeholders throughout this whole process who expressed an interest and also some concerns about a potential pilot program, and we tried to incorporate that into our pilot proposal. One of the major areas of concern that was brought up by stakeholders and by technology providers was that of privacy. So we benefited from a couple of discussions with the NYCLU to discuss privacy concerns regarding the potential to capture this passenger and driver data. Of particular concern to them was the ability to capture video and audio data via cameras of passengers and of drivers. As a result, we included the following privacy mitigations in our pilot program. The first is that the privacy policy is going to be required. We're going to have every company must submit a privacy policy, and they must adhere to that privacy policy. It's going to be one of the key criteria by which we use to evaluate proposals to make sure that they take this seriously and that there aren't any issues with protecting passenger data and getting this data out into hands of folks that shouldn't have it. Second, both vehicle owners and drivers are going to have to consent to participate. So we're not going to be capturing data from anybody who either doesn't know that this data is being collected or that doesn't want this data to be collected about them. On a similar note, if the technology does have a camera, we're going to be requiring stickers on the cars that actually show that you're going to be recorded. I think this is pretty commonplace nowadays. We're going to make sure that that's there so that the passenger knows they're getting into a car with a recording device. And we're not going to be using pilot data for enforcement during the pilot program. The point of this pilot is for us to be able to learn. We don't want to have to penalize pioneering drivers, so we will not be using any of that for enforcement during the pilot. We're also not even going to review video in most cases. We're only really going to take a look at video that's captured if it leads to some sort of incident or some sort of crash. So most of the video will actually not ever be seen by anyone. It'll be there in case an incident does happen, but we won't be looking at it. Finally, we also are requiring a security plan that's going to have to address all of the safeguarding of the data, both in the capturing and collection of it and in the storage of it. Again, we don't want folks that shouldn't be having access to this able to get into the data. It's got images, potential GPS locations at a very minute level, so really, really important to make sure that that's all being safeguarded. So looking at the pilot itself, as I've mentioned, the goal is to determine whether these technologies reduce the incidences of serious crashes. We're also going to be learning what challenges exist with these technologies and whether they're a good fit for our regulated industries, as they are, or the customization needed for our New York environment. Although saving lives is the primary motivation behind testing these technologies, we also want to understand the other values that they can bring to drivers and to vehicle owners. For example, we've heard that some of these can help drivers improve their fuel efficiency, thus cut down on gas costs, which is all really big in everyone's mind right now as gas prices are so high. We also have heard things about being able to provide alerts to vehicle owners, like a check engine light coming on remotely so that the owner knows that the vehicle needs to come in for service. And we've also heard from insurance companies and folks that work with the insurance companies that this can help reduce premiums by having this type of technology installed for the drivers and the vehicle owners. Finally, we're hoping to learn about what works best so that if we do consider something on a more widespread basis, if we do find that this stuff is effective and is useful and we should have it in more of our vehicles, what are the things that we would want out of something more widespread? The pilot has been structured to be completely voluntary, so we're not forcing anybody to participate. The participants themselves are actually going to be the technology providers. So if you're a technology company, if you know a technology company and they're interested in doing something like this, they're the ones who will actually apply with us. We will evaluate a proposal that they provide, and if we approve it, we'll have them enter into a memorandum of understanding with us. This MOU is really going to be the means by which we ensure that they actually adhere to our requirements for privacy, for security, for giving us the data so that we can actually evaluate whether this is a success or not. We did try to build in maximum flexibility as to what a participant could propose. So any of the types of technologies that I described earlier, we would be welcome to see. We'd also, if there's other types of technology that we're not aware of that has a safety focus that can help us, we'd be interested in that. And we're also trying to provide maximum flexibility on reporting. That's somewhere that in other areas of technology, we've really started to move to standardize the same reporting from all of our vendors. It makes it easier on us, but in this case, we want to see what's out there. We don't know what's best yet. This will be a really big learning process for us, so we're trying to be maximally flexible. Approved participating technology companies will then identify owners of TLC-regulated vehicles and drivers who wish to pilot their technologies. And then these parties, we're leaving it up to them to agree on who's going to bear the cost of the program, if there are any. The pilot is going to be open to all classes of our vehicles, so not just yellow cabs or green cabs, but black cars, luxury limousines, liveries, commuter vans if they want to do it, paratransits, any of them. We're trying to get the data everywhere we can, so anybody who wants to participate, we're going to let them do it. We think we're going to be able to learn a lot from this pilot. Our primary data sources are going to be the DMV crash records from DMV accident reports, the data actually collected from these technologies themselves, and then feedback from the technology companies, our licensees, and the public. A key indicator of the success is going to be crash rates and how they differ between people that are using this versus aren't using this, between people that are using different types of technologies, and even looking at a particular driver that is using a technology and how their performance changes or does not change over time. We're also going to be looking at the types of behaviors that are most highly correlated with crashes. For example, if we find that drivers who are speeding are more likely to get into serious crashes, that will help us prioritize what types of technologies we should be using and policies that can help us crack down on that behavior and prevent that behavior in the future. And then, of course, we're looking for real-world feedback about adopting these types of technologies in our industry, including information about how much these systems cost and how these costs can be offset by decreases in spending by our licensees, and then, of course, feedback from everybody. So now I'm going to go through the application process. So this is how we've structured how technology companies can apply and what we're going to be looking at when we get a proposal for deciding if they should participate in the pilot. We adopted the technology pilot program on June 6th, and we worked to put together the MOU and all of the application materials, and they're now posted on our website at this link here. So that's where technology companies and other regulators, if you're interested in knowing what our process is going to look like and what our documents look like, this is where you can find it. We're also accepting questions at research@tlc.nyc.gov, and we'll do our best to answer them as quickly as we can. So once the technology company applies for the program, we're going to be evaluating their proposals on a rolling basis. So as they come in, we'll take a look at them and decide if they meet all of the criteria. The one-year pilot is going to launch when we actually place the first technology in service. So we don't want to start the clock until we actually have vehicles out on the street operating with this stuff to maximize the amount of time that we have to collect information and data and evaluate whether this stuff is working. I put some of our key proposal elements here. So technology companies are going to be asked to provide a signed copy of that MOU, which is that agreement that will bind them to operating within the pilot structure. They'll have to provide us with some proof of insurances and a surety bond of $5,000, and that's really to hold them to that MOU should they choose to deviate from the requirements that are in there. We have something to hold against them on that. As with most of our programs, we're asking for a fee schedule, so if they're charging fees to any of our licensees, we want to have that on file with us so we know how much that is. System documentation that really just talks about what it is that they're doing. What are they putting into cars and how does it work? A data collection and reporting plan, which we'll work with each company on to fit something that works for them. Of course, our privacy and security policy, which we talked about earlier. And then we're also asking for some sample user agreements. We just want to make sure that consent is really gotten from the drivers and vehicle owners before this stuff is put into service. So we don't want any instances where somebody that did not want to participate ends up being opted in by somebody else. And so the application process itself is pretty easy, I hope. First, you'll submit an application with all of the supporting documentation. From there, our TLC staff will take a look at it and make sure that everything is in order. And if everything looks good, we'll schedule a demo and testing session out at our Woodside Queens Safety and Emissions facility. And that's when we'll really get to kind of kick the tires. We want to actually see it installed in a vehicle, see what it can do. We want to see how it's installed, make sure it doesn't interfere with any required equipment that might already be in the vehicles. And at that point, we'll also be able to ask questions of any of the technology providers and give all of the information that we need. From there, if everything looks good, then we'll approve the participant. We will ask that the first 5 vehicles that are put into service do come in for an inspection so we can make sure that the installation looks like you showed it would look like to us, so you haven't done something that we're not aware of. And then we also ask that those vehicles come back every 3 months for another inspection just to make sure there's nothing kooky going on in there. And then that's it. From there, we'll be hopefully getting some data, and we've got our research and evaluation team that'll be taking a look at that data and trying to make sense of it all, and hopefully the program will be a success. And I will also be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. All right, our last presenter will be Chris Bergen, the chair of Assurance. Chris?
Thanks, Pat. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Pat Russo and Matt Doss and the IATR for having me. It's an honor to be on this panel with the Commissioner, with Joanne. Joanne's shown a lot of vision in this area in the past, and it's been a pleasure sort of picking her brain. And we're a participant in the safety technology pilot. We have the intention of supporting the Vision Zero goal. We believe that all accidents are predictable and preventable, or at least most of them, and we intend to prove that. On a technical level, the biggest challenge we have as a company is just getting all the data that's generated by the delivery industry. I mean, it's just humongous amount of video and system data that's collected off the vehicle data bus, off of accelerometers, and from video itself. So I thought I'd give you a brief overview of the platform, what we do, and how we do it. So it's a big data platform, which everybody talks about today. I think everything is a big data application from moving on and up, but we're down. So we deliver services to the fleets, to underwriters, to regulatory agencies, and basically the data that we generate is for us. It's generated by systems and telematics devices that are plugged into the vehicle or mounted on them. And they include cameras, video event data recorders. This is an acronym-rich environment. VDR is a video event data recorder. Other safety technologies such as advanced driver assistance systems. It includes collision avoidance lane departure warning. And we pull that into an open platform. So if somebody comes out with another box next week, it's very easy for us to map their data into our system and have our same services work for them. It integrates real well with other third-party services, whether it's the TLC's driver information or it's with Fleet Focus in New York City. And we met with DCAS, and we're very interested in the fact that we have a lot of accidents that they just don't have. So there's that exchange of information capability within the platform itself. And it also provides for our insurance partners a way to create new risk management programs and settle claims, new claims processing systems. Overall, it lowers the operating costs of some of the fleets, well, most of the fleets that we're in, and streamlines the settlement process for them as well, which gets their cars back on the street or gets them the settlement that they're looking for. Right now, we're in thousands of New York City TLC vehicles. We're integrated with a number of underwriters in New York, all the major underwriters basically we're working with, and with large fleets, and also with independent telematics service providers. So we don't make the box, but we do integrate with everybody else's box. So right here we have basically a bunch of cameras on your left, and again, since we don't care about the box, if a new camera system comes out, we add that. But as Joanne pointed out, there's these new systems coming out that provide lane departure, provide collision avoidance, pedestrian warning, motorcycle and bicycle warning. So all that data gets pulled into our platform. And the idea is that the underwriters themselves, the fleets, or our partners can develop their own applications on top of what we're doing, and they don't have to worry about what the data looks like from the black box. Moving through here quickly because I have a load of live data to show you. I don't want to dwell too much on what we do, but when I can show it. But it's a major problem here, whether it's aggressive driving, or it's speeding, or it's fatigue, or distraction. They're all preventable and they're all addressable. And right now we address it through a mix of technologies, whether ADAS systems, video data recorders, or specifically there's some issues here that I think the Commissioner alluded to. And Cooper Stock, I'm not sure if everybody knows who he is in this room, but back on January 10th of this year, he was run over by a cab making a turn onto his block. And that is absolutely 100% a situational awareness problem with the cab driver. Can't expect a 9-year-old child to have his wits about him. So the cabbie was not, I don't think he was even ticketed, but he wasn't prosecuted. certainly wasn't prosecuted, but that was preventable. That's, the systems out there now that would have kept his head in the game and kept his eyeballs out on the road. And we have another source of risk that we're running into. This is Big Mike. Big Mike is, well, in the biggest market, you have a great potential for one of the greatest scams ever, the no-fault insurance scam. And this guy was the CEO of that. So he's in jail now. This fellow came into one of our cars about 3 weeks ago, and then he did this. So we got this data to the police, and they arrested him about 2 weeks later. So just about a week ago he was arrested. So for us, really what we're trying to do is address two ends of the market. There's the high frequency, low severity, which if you look at New York City, it's a pure example. It's the best example. I mean, how many cabs get in accidents just about every year? Usually minor, sometimes not. And so that high frequency and low severity gives us a lot of data to play with, a lot of data to distribute, and to learn. The other part, the other end of the spectrum is the motor coach industry, which is very low frequency, very high severity. So when you roll over your motor coach bus, for instance, it's a couple $1 million. And in that case, we provide systems such as Joanne talked about, and we think that as the price goes down, it'll be more affordable for the city and for cab drivers, and those are the IATR systems. So last slide, shameless self-promotion, is why do people buy from us? And number one, we address the major issues they have around frequency and severity, and we put the systems in and give them the data they're looking for, and the services they're looking for to immediately address and reduce their losses. However, they also have an issue around managing this gigantic data set, these blobs of data coming in from different boxes and different systems. And one of the issues there is that they can't put it on their own service, or their own servers for many reasons. And at the same time, they don't want to undertake the cost of doing what we do, which is basically integrating and playing with all this data and making it work. So they look at us to manage that data, make it portable to other systems, to allow it to interact with other systems out there as well. And then they also want to build their own risk management system. They want to build their own services on top of that data that's generated. And that just doesn't go for the insurers. I think that when we talk to DCAS and we talk to the TLC, it's going to be applications that they're either going to want to run on our system or want us to deliver to them. And we look forward to that. Now, I have a live demo question mark here. I was going to do a live demo until yesterday. I want to illustrate the kinds of data we're collecting and the services and analysis that goes on and that we're providing around it. So I'll take a few minutes, and I'll actually, instead of doing the live demo, because I could die from that, I'll actually go through a bunch of screenshots of some of our services. So this is just a login screen, obviously, very simple. Depending upon who you are and what your identity is in the system, you come in and you can choose. So one company can have multiple people in there. They have installers, they have install administrators, they have fleet managers, they have claims managers, they have an overall administrator, and they have drivers, of course. So everybody who logs in has multiple identities or a single identity. Obviously, driver probably just a single identity. I'm going to jump right to what we generate every day. This is just yesterday that I went in there and decided to do some screenshots when I wasn't going to do a live demo. And so if you look over here, this ClaimSpace is the name of the application that sits on the platform, which is called Clearview. And one event here is what we're looking at. It's that 9629. And basically, it looks like something. What you see there, the little squiggly lines on the bottom, are acceleration data. So we look at that, and we match it with video and other sensor data. And we look where it occurred. And we actually have filters in the system, too, that narrow down these events so that 80–90% of them are filtered out. And we only look at 10 or 20% of the important ones. And this one just happened to be nothing. It was actually a pothole, which is, again, a very interesting piece of information if you think about it. But here's an example of what happens. Let me go back a second here. Down at the lower left-hand corner of that middle slide with the squiggly lines, it's a great description, right? It says event management. That's something that both we do and our fleets do. So you can go in there, you can look at the event, you can see whether it was actually a pothole or if it was a real accident, and then you can do something with that data. In the case of it was an accident, this is what we would do with it. We would turn it into an incident. And that incident, so events and machine-generated incidents are something that's interesting out of that machine-generated event. In this case, the example I picked was an accident that involved a bus and a rear-ended a taxi cab. So across the line there, I have details highlighted, but it also has the policy, so it's integrated with the underwriters. So you're looking at the underwriting data, you're looking at the policy data, resources or police reports, other data that are associated with that specific incident. Then you have the source where that data came from, so you can look at it in more detail, and actually it's raw form. And then you have a review, which I'm going to go into now. And so we go into review, and I wish I was live right here because everybody likes video. It's a video world, but this is a pretty good synopsis of what occurred. A bus actually rear-ended one of the livery cars. And that livery car actually rear-ended a yellow cab, so we got a threefer. I think American Transit Insurance, who's our partner in this space, I think they got 2 claims in one of this. And somebody got something against the MTA. So that's just a quick look at a specific incident. This is the incident that I showed earlier where it was the armed robbery. So the police had access to this, and they very quickly could look at this and determine what occurred, and then do something about it. So it's very effective from that perspective. Now, some of the other interesting things, claim space is where we manage events and incidents, and where the exciting, sort of sexy stuff is, the video. But what's even more interesting from our perspective is risk outlook. It's actually a part of the platform where we look at different trending, different predictive analytics, and just pure historical analytics. In this case, I'm going to look at incidents by location. I think this is interesting, and I don't think that the police certainly get a lot of reports, but a lot of accidents and a lot of events we're catching are ones where the driver is a minor offender. So if anybody's familiar with Upper Manhattan and the Bronx, this will look very familiar. You'll see there's somewhat an even distribution of a lot of accidents, but we do get clustering of many accidents, and it's interesting the sort of things that we're finding out around that. Then we're also looking at, for our underwriter, incidents by owner, and then you can normalize that. So you can look at 1,000-unit fleet versus 100-unit fleet, and you can look at trending. So is this company, are they becoming more or less safe? And the same way that we look at companies, individual companies can look at their individual drivers. So the whole idea here is we're pushing that risk management out to the edge, and let the fleets and the bases and the people who are closest to the drivers manage them, protect their privacy. The system is built that way, and I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens on the pilot. Another thing, you can play with the system here, and again, I wish we were live, because you can look at certain sorts of criteria and look at when accidents occur. When do accidents occur in Brooklyn versus the Bronx, whether they occur on I-95 or the Cross Bronx. So all of these are basically by date, time, and again, I don't know if Camille Condon is here, but our partner at CCNY, we're going to open this up to them too. And again, within the constraints of the privacy rules, allow people to start looking at this and running their own analytics against it. This is something we mashed up with NHTSA data, which is basically fatalities in the highway fatalities in the New York area. So we don't have any fatalities yet, but we wanted to mash something up that had something meaningful and colorful. It wasn't a very good resolution, excuse me for that. Another aspect of this, and this is my last couple of slides here, is the whole idea of on a monthly basis of being reportable, and everything in the system is reportable. And here's just a quick query that was done on the number of accidents that occurred in a certain fleet, actually from August 1st until yesterday. So you can scroll down in here, it can be done, it can be used for monthly reports. It's something that is useful to the TLC, to the fleet themselves, and even possibly to other regulatory agencies. That's the presentation. Thank you.
Although we ran a little late from the morning session, we certainly have some time for a few questions. If anyone would like questions, Brooke has a microphone. There's one on the other side. Any questions for the panelists? I might have one. How about that? Actually, it's for all three. As you can see, that there's obviously overlap in the subject matter, but obviously in the perspective quite different. I'd like to ask each one of you one, I guess, question in terms of what did you find as you went down the path and discussed the presentation today? What was your greatest challenge in terms of whether it be the Vision Zero program, the pilot program, or the work with the analytics, and we have a hot mic there.
I think our greatest challenge is communication. It's communicating. Everybody knows now what the Vision Zero brand looks like. I think the city's done a really good job at sort of taking a page out of the marketing book and making a brand around Vision Zero. But when it comes to the specifics of what Vision Zero means for our licensees, we have tremendous difficulty communicating that. I'll just give you sort of a quick example. I described the rulemaking package that we had a hearing on Thursday, and it was a package that would enact the rules that are going along with it would make a strict penalty formulation for drivers involved in critical injury crashes. And there was so much bad information about what these rules were really about. We heard everything from if you're not a citizen, you're going to be deported if you get into a crash, you'll have your license revoked, you could be arrested, there'll be, everything under the sun. We heard none of it was in the local law, none of it was in our rules package, but as soon as people heard that there were going to be actions taken against drivers involved in a crash, it just sort of went, it sort of went viral with what's the worst thing that could happen. And ultimately, we thought, okay, we'll reduce this to a one-pager, and we put together what I thought was a pretty good one-pager on what these rules actually do. And I think that did something. It was worked at least for the elected officials, and then they could use that as a way to translate what the actual rules were going to do to their constituents. So I think it was a good step, but it's clearly a very, very difficult task to tell people how exactly rules are going to affect their lives. We have a language barrier, we have cultural barriers, and we have extremely complex rules. So like I said, saying we're going to start a project is the easy part. Actually getting people to kind of understand the day-to-day ramifications of it and for the agency to absorb those is much harder. So I would say communication is our biggest struggle.
Thanks.
I actually don't think for the pilot program we've had our biggest challenge. I think it's yet to come, and that's actually getting the stuff into cars and finding licensees that will actually want to participate. It's more data collection, more information about where they are, how they're driving, what they're doing. There's always, everyone's scared of Big Brother. This is like the ultimate Big Brother following you around in your car. We've heard that there are fleets that are interested in participating. I really hope that's the case. I hope the drivers want to do this. I hope that we can help them understand what some of the benefits can be, but I think our biggest challenge is yet to come when we actually approve some technology providers and having them be able to find folks that want to work with them to actually do the pilot program.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you. The biggest challenge hasn't started yet. I think that it's going to happen when we start rolling it out. Or we've already met with a number of different yellows and green fleets, of course, but everybody wants to be a part of it. But the issue here is transition from something we're doing now, which is basically unregulated to some degree. I mean, we weren't doing anything that was outside. We were protecting everybody's privacy rights and the fleet's rights and working with the underwriters very closely and protect our data very closely. Now we're walking into a very highly regulated, monitored scenario here, and I hope that doesn't turn it into some sort of fiasco.
Okay. We thank our panelists for their expertise, their time, and their dedication.